Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to Quests and Answers, the show where we talk to all manner of awesome people from around the gaming world. I'm Dan Casey, and today we're having a very special guest joining me here in the Conversation Dungeon. Now, you may have seen him gracing your screens as the host of Dropout's Actually. You may have laughed your entire ass off at one of his many live comedy shows, and you may have even seen him right here on Geek and Sundry in everything from Critical Role to Goblin Mode and beyond, just to name a few of his many credits. Folks, it's the man, the myth, the legend, Ify Nwadiwe. Ify, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Always a good day when I get to hang out with you on or off camera, but today it happens to be on. So, Ify, last time you were on the channel, you were joining us for an episode or three of Sagas of Sundry Goblin Mode as the high-flying follicular sky pirate Raytelg. That was a blast. I've gotten to play with you a handful of times over the years, dating back to a very special episode of Critical Role we did way back in the very early days.
Oh, yeah. We were like one of the first early guests of Critical Role. And we were just doing the Critical Reject stream that, was Ulfgar Fireforge. And then we came back for another charity stream. And that was good stuff.
Yeah, but I'm curious, like we've been playing together on and off over the years, but when did you first get into the world of pen and paper RPGs? When was the first time you got sucked into this world?
For a long time I've always said like, it was in the when I was 18 when I played my first D&D game, but like when I think about it, kind of even before that, because I used to do a lot of RPing online. So like on Go Gaia, I was doing like RPs. I was doing a RP forum for Cowboy Bebop. So, but I think like for a traditional full system, it started with D&D, and it was when I was 18. But as far as like role playing and storytelling, with someone else, that started, as soon as I found other nerds online, it seems like.
Dude, I'm so happy you mentioned stuff like Go Gaia and like old DBZ or Cowboy Bebop forums. Like we had a DBZ forum back in the day. I remember people doing all sorts of cool RP and live journal. I was even like in the ancient texts back when they gave out CD-ROMs with hundreds of free hours of AOL, discovering RP like chat rooms there. It was definitely a strange time to be alive. But I'm curious about that game of D&D you mentioned, the first one. Do you remember your earliest character?
Oh, yeah. My first character was a paladin that was a dragonborn, and he had lightning breath. And it was only for one session and it was a classic. I immediately ran up into the classic D&D trope of not opening the door and just trying to break it down and taking forever to break it down until someone else walked up and opened it.
Nothing like discovering all your effort was for an unlocked door. But then again, when we played together, I feel like a door nearly killed our entire party way back in the day in Critical Role. But they can be an enduring, perhaps the most evil monster you can face in any TTRPG is just a locked door or unlocked.
Yes. Oh yeah. I know. It's truly because I think that's like a great intro, especially into early like D&D culture of like, I think people get caught up in the fact that like, you can do anything, and they don't think to do like the basic things like, okay, I'm gonna try and open the door first, like going through this like system. And I think it is like, it just kind of goes for each D&D, because for me, like when you play with me, it's like, if you're trying to walk through a door and it's unlocked, you walk through the door, I'm not going to say that it's closed, or I will say like there's a door there, but I think I don't want to sit there and see you trying to break down a door that's closed, because I'd rather just continue telling the story.
Yeah. It's the sort of the opposite of railroading in that respect, where it's just like, all right, I could let you figure out how to open this any other way apart from simply turning the knob, or we could just proceed with the story so we can all tell a nice story together.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I think it's a perfect hazing ritual if it's someone's first time and you do that. totally fine. But I feel like now I'm just like, no, I spent too much time on this story. Let's go.
It does feel like an interesting litmus test for players in terms of like how their gameplay brain grafts onto something like this, because it is, a game like you mentioned, sandbox potential. You can do anything. Why would you just simply turn the knob when you could try to, use a 10-foot pole to check for traps, or like case the window, or burn the building down so only the door is left? The possibilities are endless, sometimes to the player's detriment.
Yes, truly.
You mentioned your first character. Now that you've been playing for a number of years, how do you feel like your approach to character creation has changed at all?
Oh man, I think now, before, when I'm new to the game and I was super like excited, it starts with, okay, what is like fun? What is exciting? What's a cool character to make? I think when I first started playing, I was more so treating D&D like any other game. Like, what is the game to play? What do I think is the most, the perfect build for what we need? And I think that nowadays, and I think part of it does in fact come from the like aspect of what we do, which is doing it as our jobs for display, storytelling. Now it really leans into, okay, what is the story I want to tell, Do
you find that when you are making a character, you have a different approach when it comes to something for a home game versus like an actual play, something intended for an audience?
Oh man, yeah. I think for a home game, I think you can like min-max a bit. I think you can, do things where you're trying to like play the game more. Whereas like for an actual play, it's storytelling. It's a piece of media. It is just another narrative story told using D&D as another kind of storyteller, another writer. And yeah, that's what's fun. You were getting ready to say something.
No. I was just thinking about that min-max. I feel like there's one person in every group where their mission in life is to figure out how to take any given rule set and completely shatter it and just bend it to their will. And that's not always fun to experience for the audience on camera. It can be fun when you thwart a DM's plans in some capacity, but in a home game, there's a time and a place, I would say.
Definitely. And I feel like, all of the different tables I've played at for actual plays have been different, right? Where you have sometimes it's someone who's like, throw what you want at me. I'm going to be able to dodge it each way. And of course, I think a lot of people don't see the like off camera discussions that might be popping up, when that goes down. But yeah, I think there's the element of, what is the character that's going to be the best, storyteller in this event? The best. What is you? I think that when you play home games, you get to look at it like a loadout, and then when you do actual play, you look at it as a cast of characters, and you kind of start with the character first and almost work your way back sometimes. Where I'm already thinking about who that person is, what they're into, and then I pick the class that fits them better. There is some like, okay, what is everyone? Let's make sure we don't like do like 5 bards. But beyond that, it's like, okay, what's open? Cool. Okay, I'm going to find the character and then attach the class to them.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that perspective, especially when you are, especially when you're making something that is intended for a wider audience. You want to make sure that characters coming first. I think about Goblin Mode, where I had this exact same conversation with Amy, where I was like, well, we need a tank. We need someone who's beefy. And she's like, no, just be 3 glass cannons. Like, what's the worst that could happen? You die almost every episode. And the answer is yes, that probably was the worst thing that almost happened. But
yes,
at the same time, it was more narratively satisfying to play these sort of 3 people that at the beginning, like a slight breeze could probably kill them.
Yeah.
But by the end, you get to go on that journey alongside them. And it's a rewarding experience, especially when you're starting from that place of character. But I know that you're someone who, I know you primarily as a player because that's how I've gotten to play these games with you. But I know you're also someone who's frequently behind the screen as well. When did you make that shift from player to DM, and what was that experience like?
Oh, I think the first time I really like DM'd something was when I did a homebrew Black Panther RPG for a different AP, and that was like the first time I kind of went behind the DM screen. I'm trying to like think deep, because I think when I'm now doing it for my home game, I think this is the first time I've DM'd a home game, and that's been very fun. Just kind of having the story be told and kind of put players to it. And there's like a couple forever DMs that are at the table, and it's always fun to see in what ways you can kind of catch them off guard, right? And make them excited, where it's like, oh yeah, they check this out. Like, this is some fun stuff that you now get to experience on that side of the table.
I hear you. There's nothing like seeing the joy on a forever DM's face when they finally get to be a player for a change. It's just this like huge sense of burden being lifted off their shoulders. I'm curious for you though, what is your preparation like for a typical session? Like, you're someone who needs to prep a lot in advance?
I do a lot of improv, but it is like a lot of prep in the way I like to describe how I build out my games is I like to create a sandbox. So instead of making like a linear story that has train tracks, I think of like the place they're going to visit, who are going to be the characters there, what's the story behind it. And that way, no matter what thread they pull on, since they're all interconnected in some way with that baseline story, then we can venture down that rabbit hole versus, doing it. And I'm like, okay, in this session, I want them to enter the town. They're going to be captured, and then they have to make their case to this person, and they have to hit. But I feel like the moment you try and put people to hit on your list, it just spirals out of control. I remember with the same group, I kind of broke away from it because I was like, oh, I want to do a murder mystery thing. And I laid out all the people they need to talk to kind of get to the bottom of this. And it has morphed and transformed because they went and talked to, there was 4 different people. They went to talk to the 3 people. And then right before they went to talk to the 4th person, I just offhandedly was like, oh yeah. And then there's like a dungeon down there. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we definitely want to check the dungeon because maybe somebody heard something. And it was like, damn, that is true. I was just fleshing out this castle, but I definitely didn't build or render this dungeon in my head at all. That was just stuff. And then they're like, we're going down there. And so now I'm just building on the fly all these people who exist in the dungeon, which has led me to get to the point now where I am I want to build the playground and just expect them to play with any piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, players are always kind of like raptors testing the fences. It's of natural, like you said, naturally, if you mention a dungeon, they're going to want to go explore that dungeon.
Oh, yeah.
I like to mention an example of, I was playing in a game with a friend of mine, and he mentioned, oh, all of these fancy looking nobles are getting on a train. Oh, obviously we want to get on this train as well and do a rootin' tootin' train heist. Why wouldn't that be the next thing that we do? And he was like, I really didn't think that was what you were going to do. I thought you would explore the town first. Well, choo-choo, buddy. It's all aboard time.
Yes.
But I think that's where something like your improv experience comes in super handy because, it makes you feel probably less just sort of bowled over when you get hit with the Uno reverse card and people are like, oh, those carefully laid plans that you had, we're just going to upend them entirely.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely. It's like, oh yeah, no, you didn't upend anything. I've planned for this. Prepare yourself.
Yeah, and that's I feel like that being able to play that off is where most of the time I feel like players probably won't know. As long as you proceed confidently and act like you have a plan, I think they'll believe that a plan was in fact in place. And sometimes maybe just say, hey, I need to take a minute. I wasn't expecting you to do this, but we're going to make it happen. So just give me a second.
Yes.
I'm curious for you though. you mentioned sort of homebrewing a Black Panther RPG. Do you have any favorite homebrew rules or sort of things that you employ in your home games?
Ooh, man.
Or a favorite you've encountered?
Yeah, I think I'm just kind of like, because I am a rule of cool DM. So that means if you introduce something that is cool and is progressing the story, even if it's out of the world of the game or out of the rules, we will make it work. So I always tell my players, just figure out what you want to do. We'll focus on if it works after. And I think one of the kind of homebrew systems that I kind of really liked recently was, so the world of my home game is a reverse isekai. It is a world, it's a realm where people keep blipping in, and they're blipping into this realm, and they've been called the Marooned. No one knows where they come from. They don't know how to send them back. And the players are part of this group that's trying to figure out what's happening, what's going on. And one of the players that's a Marooned is just a totally wild, like, warlock skeleton person named Deadwood, and he like is like a outlaw cowboy warlock in this world, and he was on the run from the god of debts and fell right into kind of her master plan, which was to use him to hunt down the person who killed the god of gambling, and has left all this extra responsibility because they come from a world that has multiple gods, almost too many gods. Like I said, there's a god of death, there's a god of gambling, everything that exists, there's a god of it, and it's slowly causing this like overwhelming nature where people are killing them, and then other gods have to take over the role of that. And they were tracking down someone for a just one-off mission, and the person owed someone money. And my player, E, she was like, well, since, I'm working for the god of debts, isn't there some kind of way I can track them down since they owe money? And that was like such a cool idea that I let it fly. And I basically made it an ability where they kind of tap in to the debts owed to that person, and they show up almost like a spiritual line to the person that they owe money to. And they were able to they didn't roll high enough to get all 4 names, but they were able to get 3 names based on this connection to the god of debts who exists now in this world with him. And that was like really cool. I think it was such a interesting way to utilize an interesting type of deity, and how it helped, find what they needed in the moment.
I love that, because it's such a great push and pull between player and like DM, game master, because they're using the narrative structure, the scaffolding that you've provided to do something really innovative and expand that world in fun and interesting ways. Like, that's what I love about tabletop RPGs, because it is it's a type of communal, collaborative storytelling that you don't really get to do in a lot of other mediums. I feel like, if you're playing a game, that's like if you're playing like a video game, that's something that's been a curated experience by a specific team of people. If you're watching a movie, that's another curated experience. This is a story that you're telling and evolving together. Obviously it's in the playground of the DM who's presenting it, but at the same time, I love that as an example of how player and DM create something that becomes more than the sum of its parts.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You are someone who is a nexus of very cool, interesting people. You're someone who I always run into someone, they happen to know you, and both of our faces light up when we realize that we both know you.
Yeah.
And what I love about tabletop role-playing games is it is something where you have to come together, and you bring a group of people together, like I mentioned, to tell a story. And, we were sort of chatting before we started recording about the sort of ambient psychic damage that we take just from existing in the world nowadays. Headlines seem bad out there. It can just be a challenge to get through the day sometimes. To me, it feels more important than ever to make time and sit down to enjoy something like the simple act of play. So I'm curious for you, is that something that is important for you? And how do you feel like the value you place on something like that has changed over time?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I would say, the value, I think, changes in many ways because like I said, it's what we do. It's our everyday, and it's something that we loved doing before people paid us to do it, but it's still a part of it. So I think it makes you value the off camera moments just as much as you like have the on camera ones, and you kind of try and connect, and you have this bond with people. I feel like we'll go like, at sometimes years without seeing each other. And then as soon as we do, it's like time has never passed. I definitely want to be better about making sure it isn't years and find time to actually connect outside of pods and work. But yeah, I think it really is. There's just like a fun connection with the thing that we do and the people that we do it with, and also just making sure we keep it fun for ourselves, and it doesn't become just something we look at and just like shudder because we're like, that's work.
No, I 100% appreciate that, because when you monetize your hobbies, it becomes difficult to derive joy from them if it does just feel like another sort of check mark that you're ticking off. And being able to create that separation of church and state to still find joy in the things you do for work, even if they happen to be things you do for fun, I think is a very important balance to strike. So it's always one that I'm trying to keep up. It's nice when I can do different things outside of work, cultivate different hobbies, or explore even different sides of a hobby that I do professionally. But it's always a bit of a push and pull. Thinking about people that either maybe don't do this professionally or want to just up their game a little bit, is there a piece of advice you would give to someone who's maybe prepping to run or play their first game, or maybe wants to shake things up with their existing home game?
Oh yeah, I think just no need to overthink it. I think some people, they're watching a lot of like the Critical Roles, the Dimension 20s, the Adventure Zones, and all these shows that have all this support outside of the people who are just sitting at the table, and they're trying to compare the game that they're presenting with their friends to that. And at the end of the day, you sitting at the table telling that story with your friends, that's it. That's the stuff. It isn't about if you're telling the best story, if you're the most compelling, like that'll happen on its own. It's a collaborative storytelling experience. If you're listening to your players, you'll know what they want to do. You know what they want to tie in on. I think my other point of advice is that line. It's a collaborative storytelling experience. It's very easy to get into the position of trying to like craft the perfect story for your players to play through. But I think the best story is the one that everyone is invested and involved in. And it even happens to me. If I get too locked in, if I get too much dip on my chip and I want to tell a very specific story, I will see the difference in this like crafted story, which they do appreciate, they do like. And yet the moment you add connective tissue to the characters they're playing, to their backstory, there's just another level of commitment and excitement. And I think that's why it's totally worth making sure you're asking your players, to submit their backstories, and you're reading that, and you are adding it to the story, because that's when you're going to create something so good. That's when you get those stakes that are larger than life.
No, 100%. I have a very vivid memory of, I was playing in a Curse of Strahd campaign, and our DM had us just send backstories at the very beginning. And then it was almost like a year later, this detail that I'd honestly forgotten about with this character backstory came back to be a major plot point. And it was such a holy moment to me, where it just made so many things feel so much more resonant, click into place. And at that point, it felt like, oh, cool, we're really building something together. Like, I already felt this way, but now I feel it in a whole different dimension, where you feel a different level of agency beyond, just trying to see what I can do in initiative order. So I love that as a piece of advice.
Oh, yeah. It really is kind of funny how different it is for folks the moment they feel a connection, and I don't think there's anything against, DMs and like what they're saying. I think it's just kind of like it's just people just feel more tapped in because it's the story that they told and it feels more personal. And I think that it's not that like people aren't interested in the stories their DM are telling. Like they definitely are. But the moment that it is connected to them, I feel like that just adds like it makes it more personal, and they are now trying to get on top of it.
Yeah, it brings people into this world in a way that I think they otherwise might not be drawn in, because I think about the sort of time commitment needed for playing an RPG. It's not really something you play like, no one sits down to play like, I'm just going to do a couple quick rounds of D&D. There's no like 30-minute session typically. You're there for several hours, and it's a long time to keep people invested because, the spotlight's not always on your character. You want people to feel actively engaged and like they have a meaningful stake in this world, and that what's happening matters even when it's not happening directly to them. And I think what you described there is definitely a great way of creating that sense of group investment, making sure that everyone feels like they have a tangible stake and that they're really interested in what's going to happen as things move on. And look, I get it. Sometimes a 4-hour session, especially if 2.5 hours of that is like 3 rounds of combat, 18 seconds of real world time occurring in game, it can feel like, okay, I'm just kind of waiting for my turn to come around. But during those other narrative moments, you really want, you want them to hit just as much as the players want them to hit. So why not create that synthesis like you were saying? Something else I want to talk about, something I find very fascinating and cool about your multi-hyphenate career is, in addition to screenwriting, you've also done a fair amount of writing for games. You've worked on projects like Apex Legends and also through Vesper with Lanterns of Nightfall. So can you tell us a little bit about how you approach creating a narrative gameplay experience for a medium like video games, and how that maybe compares to prepping a gameplay experience for a tabletop setting?
Ooh, yeah. It's actually kind of similar in some ways. Like I worked on, I created Newcastle for Apex Legend, and I worked on some stuff for Borderlands 4, and more on that's going to come out, very soon. But in that, like, I find that when you are creating characters for the game, before you even can get to like writing any dialogue or like doing any of that stuff, you kind of define who the character is. You kind of do like a side for that character, which is usually their name, age range, some background, a little bio, about them. And I think that is just like making a character in D&D. You are sitting down, you are kind of finding the history, beyond that, and making these characters and just like developing them. And then as you play the game, the D&D game, you learn more about their story and you let them flesh out. And I feel like when you're writing for video games, you're kind of planning that out, that's coming down in the future. So you're just allowing yourself to kind of determine how this is going to play out. So it's really very similar to making an NPC or making a, boss or villain in a tabletop game in a lot of ways. And I think that is what has prepped it, for me a lot, where now I'm just writing down the lines that they'll say based on the instances on the, spreadsheet in front of me. But I kind of approach it the exact same way.
That's very cool to hear, though, there's a more of a one-to-one translation there than I think people might expect. And this, in D&D, you're waiting for that hypothetical situation to come up. Here, a lot of them have been presupposed because there's so many instances of gameplay or scenarios that are theoretically possible that you need to work with through the pipeline there. What would you say has been like one of the bigger learning curves you maybe encountered in the world of game dev?
Oh man, I think just staying on top of deadlines. There's those JIRAs. You sit down, you plan it out, and I think also just how in the nitty gritty it can be. And I'll explain myself because I know I'm just saying words at that point. But for a game like Apex Legend, it is a arena shooter, battle royale game, and a lot of the story is told in these kind of regular interaction that happen. And then at the same time, this is a game that you drop in, you try and win, you die, you repeat. A lot of these actions, a lot of these moments are going to happen a lot. So you're going to have to write down a lot of the same thing in different ways. So if it's like, hey, we need to get to the point, because they know people are going to play this a bunch and they don't want it to get old, you're writing, hey, let's get to the point, almost like 15, 20, 25 different ways to say the same thing. When you are selecting, the character select lines, that is also another one that you're writing 15, 20 different versions of, so that it isn't a thing that just gets old after your like fifth game of the day. And so because of that, you're able to inject kind of like little Easter eggs about who they are, but also it does become pretty, you start kind of like grasping at straws when you get to, I'm landing here number 14.
Yeah, dude, I can imagine that. I imagine it's a double-edged sword because it can be mind-numbing after a certain point, but it's also a very interesting muscle to develop, being able to take this like very utilitarian line of saying like, all right, we're dropping here, but saying that in like 16 different ways, but managing that expectation with like something like a hero shooter. I've played a lot of Apex, a lot of Overwatch, both games that have a lot of, it's like environmental storytelling almost, where you have to imply certain things about the character.
Yes.
Because you're given so few, like you get the occasional dialogue interaction, like when you're waiting to spawn or when you're landing, but it's, you're not able to accomplish as much as you would in some of the cinematics they offer. But at the same time, it's a unique storytelling challenge, I feel.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because it truly is like you're telling this story in a very almost secretive way. You're like, oh, I got to inject the story in here, but I can't, sit here and have the characters say all these lines. And of course we have like the episodes that you can like check out and the other things like that. But in general, you're kind of sneaking it in front of everyone's face. Like this is, this is the story that is in between the matches and updates. Because I think for a game like Apex, it's very interesting having this like different user base where you have some of the users who just cannot give a shit about the story. They are like, I'm here to play the game. I want to, be a, MLG, gamer. I want to be the best, the very best there ever was. And then you have people who are like lore hounds and they're like, no, I want every piece of lore. I want to know all the stories. I want to know behind what's happening. I need it all. And I will look through every nook and cranny to give it, to get that information. And yeah, those ones are the ones who I'd be excited to see kind of unraveling or like calling something that I know is going to happen way early. And I'm like, yeah, you got it. You don't even know, but you got it.
I'm definitely in the camp that I want to know more about these characters, but not in the camp where I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to choose an off-meta character just so I can hear this unique voice interaction, which I imagine is the push and the pull where it's like, okay, we have to write some sort of interaction between these characters, even if this one gets picked maybe one out of every 100 games.
Yes.
But for that 100th time, we got to reward people with that little nugget of story, because otherwise, what's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. I know. That's why it's so funny, because there was an effect that happened in and in my character, he was Bangalore's brother who was believed to be dead. And so we put a special animation elimination for Bangalore and Newcastle. And it was hidden in there. And we were wondering, I was like, there's a world in which no one finds this because you can buy like custom eliminations.
Yeah.
And then you also have to go against someone who is playing a Bangalore. But then, of course, there are people who, when a new character comes out, they go and do the elimination on every character, and just to find that stuff. So by the time that launched, everyone kind of knew what was going on. It was very funny. I was like, oh yeah, I was worried, and yet they found out so quick it wasn't even funny.
Yeah, never underestimate the power of a dedicated fan base that wants to discover each of those interactions. Yes. Because, thank goodness for those fans out there that are the lore hounds, because they will ferret it out for the rest of us that don't have the same amount of time to test every single character elimination reaction.
Yeah, and I truly am grateful for them, because I'll just watch their video and then I don't have to
Yep.
I don't have to go play it. I'm like, there it is.
Oh, that's the narrative experience I wanted. Thank you for curating this for me.
Yes, you did what needed to be done, and I thank you for your service.
Amazing. So what's a piece of advice that you might give someone who might be looking to get into the world of game development or game design is maybe coming at this from experience playing tabletop or TTRPGs?
I think lean into your instincts as a storyteller. I think write as much as possible. I think that's the best thing you can do when you're trying to break in, is just to write as many stories. And it feels so cliche. Everyone, I heard it coming up and I was like, they're like, write every day. And you're like, what do you even mean? And that isn't to say every day you need to be writing a script, or every day you need to be writing, prose. That can be as simple like when, Twitter wasn't a hell site, I would be like, I'm gonna write 3 jokes a day on there. I'm gonna write like any way that you're just flexing the muscle of writing daily so that it becomes commonplace, but also you have this beautiful thing where the more you write, the more like backlog of your work you get. And as you write, you just get better. I remember I wrote my first, I was like, I need a sample pilot for screenwriting. I need to get that out the way. Whatever. I'm just going to go ahead and just write one. I'm just going to write it up. I wrote it for my improv team at the time, and it really didn't go anywhere, but it was a sample that was usable. And then it got me work. And then I went to write something new. And then I wrote that, and I went back to my old sample before that, and I was like, oh man, I've gotten so much better. And then I wrote something else, and then I was like, oh, I got so much better. And I think that's a thing that can happen. And I'm talking to a lot of you folks out there with these well fleshed out, wonderful, delicious OCs that you've made, and you've posted your OC on, Twitter or Blue Sky, and you keep talking and you have all these details about it and how cool they are and all the snippets of the lore, and you won't just write the story yet. And I remember I was actually on Joko Cruise with a bunch of, Joko Cruise also has a lot of great sci-fi authors and authors on the boat. And I was talking about that phenomena, and 2 of them were actual like writing professors. And they go, oh yeah, because they do that because you can't ruin it yet. Mm-hmm. You can, if you do the world building, but never write it, you don't ruin it. And there's no way for you to ruin it because it's your thing. And I think you just got to take that swing. You got to just start writing it. And at worst, you quote unquote ruin it. Guess what? You can do another draft, so, and the first draft is always the hardest. Let me tell you that. And let me repeat that for you one more time. The first draft is always going to be the hardest. It is the longest part of my writing process, is always getting that first draft down. And so now what I do is just get whatever I can on the page, just make it to start to finish, try and hit the page count. And then after that, polishing it just flies by. So get that first draft down and then everything else goes so much quicker.
So I want to transition a little bit and go from talking about advice to talking about knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge, specifically through pedantic trivia. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you are the host of a very popular show in Dropout called Actually. You went from the winningest contestant to the host of the show. I'm curious for you, Ify. You're someone I've known for a very long time. I know you have a deep well of knowledge, but what's that experience been like going from contestant to host?
Oh, it's been great, and for many reasons. One, Actually is a show that I'm passionate about. Like, I've loved competing in it. I loved everything about it. And, there was a talk that we were having kind of before all this where, we were talking about like, what would be the show that I host for Dropout? What show would I host for Dropout? And every version was like some, bootleg version of Actually, because Actually is the type of show that I'd want to make, because Dropout makes like fun panel shows that people can jump on, and if I want to do that nerdy, what better way is it than a show like Actually? And I was noodling on it, and I was trying to find like, what would that show be? And then I didn't have to think anymore because they asked me to host Actually. and so I went ahead and I said yes quicker than I've ever said yes in my life. And it's been a dream. But not only that, but in my history of being on all the networks that people have seen me on, the last time I hosted my own show was back when I was doing stuff on Geek and Sundry, like up until then. So the big running joke was that, if he's just everywhere on the internet, but doesn't have his own channel, because I just, with my ADHD, I just cannot wrap my brain around trying to have my own YouTube channel, trying to get I just was like, I would much rather just hop on someone else's channel, say the things that I would say on mine, and then call it there. And now, we come, we do Actually, and I'm like, oh, I have my own show, and I can just see the support, and everyone is so sweet, and there's so much like love. It's such a treat, so I think that's the biggest jump, I think, is the level of like responsibility and ownership that I have now, because now I've just totally, moved into, moved into just this new position of just this guy with the show.
And I feel like that sense of passion and joy really comes through in the episodes, because you folks put together incredible panels. It's just a really great environment, all in the pursuit of having a good time, nerdy trivia, all of that fun stuff. But there's this pervasive undertone of fun that to me, as someone who we've been making content online for approximately 1 million years now, being able to still derive that sense of joy and passion, I think, is a special thing, and that really comes through in every episode. Have there been any topics that you have not been able to include in the show yet that you're dying to for future episodes, like in sort of generalized areas of expertise?
No, I think we hit the ground running, and we did mechs already, so I think what I like that we do and will continue to do is Brian is really good at finding like these like niche weird things that he likes to tap in on. So it's always like weird internet, like that's his favorite kind of thing. And I hope we just find more things like that. Or like when we did the girly episode, because someone just tweeted it, I was like, yeah, that is a great idea. Sometimes tweeting your good ideas will get seen, and I'll be like, yeah, let's just do it.
That's awesome. I do like the idea that just posting online is not always yelling into a wind tunnel. Most of the time, yes, but occasionally a good idea will get through.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any subjects that you get particularly pedantic about in real life?
Ooh, I feel like anything when it comes to like polyamory and like dating stuff, I think that's my element where I start to get really pedantic and annoying, because I love, it's something I've always loved talking about. And, I have the podcast with M, our relationship pod, where we talk about these things. And it is like very funny. Like someone like referred to us as like educators. And I was like, huh, like I immediately was like, well, first off and foremost, we are not professionals. But I think there's like an element to it where, yeah, there's just some very unactuallyable things about like dating that I think people get misconstrued.
100%. I imagine there's a billion misconceptions, especially when it's something as charged as anything relating to dating.
Yes.
When you mention the word educators, I definitely understand being like, well, I wouldn't say educator.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I know there's people with degrees out there, but there's a term that Kyle Hill, our mutual friend, uses for what he does, and that is science communicator. So I feel like you both could easily call yourself relationship communicators in a way that is like, you're talking about this. At the end of the day, it's all about communication, important in everything you do. But I think in this capacity, it's like, it removes the pressure of being like, oh man, do I need to go out and get an MA in sexual education now? But I can appreciate that. That's awesome. I'm wondering as well, when I think about a show like it makes me think of people that are champing at the bit to tell you that like Viggo Mortensen broke his toe when Aragorn kicks the helmet in Fellowship of the Ring. Do you have a factoid or anything like that in real life that you're like, oh man, I can't wait till someone brings up this particular special interest or moment so I can chime in with something deeply relevant to the conversation?
Oh, I think my like fun fact that I always shoehorn in every time is the fact that Diet Coke is the new Coke flavor, and that's why they had to make Coke Zero. So when they made the new Coke flavor that everyone hated, which is the reason why Coca-Cola is called Coca-Cola Classic, they made new Coke, everyone hated it, and its sales were bad, so they went back to the original formula, which thus created Coca-Cola Classic. Diet Coke did fine. Like, people actually liked the flavor. So when they went back to Coca-Cola Classic, Diet Coke stayed that changed formula. And so if you're ever wondering why Diet Coke tastes different than Coca-Cola and Coke Zero tastes like Coca-Cola, that is because Coke Zero is Diet Coca-Cola and Diet Coke is Diet New Coke.
That is wild. I had no idea about that. It's also wild because my fun fact that I like to share is also Coke related. So It's a very small world. Do you know why? Do you know the story of how Fanta came into existence?
No, what's the story?
So during the lead up and into World War II, soda was very popular in Germany. Specifically, Coca-Cola products were very popular in Germany. Coke was a very popular drink. However, as fascism was on the rise and Nazis took power, the Coca-Cola Corporation did not want their all-American beverage being associated with like the official drink of Hitler Youth. So, to create a product they could sell in European markets, specifically in Germany, they came up with Fanta and Fanta Orange. So that is why we have Fanta today. Why there's a much bigger population of Fanta drinkers across the sea.
Wow.
So yeah, it's Fanta. I wouldn't call it Nazi Cola, but they wanted to change things up from Coca-Cola, so that's why they want a Fanta.
Yeah. That is very funny. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird things where you're like, okay, I wish I didn't know this, but I guess I'm glad that I do. But what can you do? Well, I want to transition into sort of the final phase of our conversation today, because all good things, unfortunately, must come to an end. But I want to leave people with some recommendations, some cool things to do as they go forth into their week or their evening, whatever they're doing. So, we started off talking about TTRPGs. Do you have a favorite TTRPG or just an RPG in general that you think people are maybe sleeping on that you wish got a bit more shine or wish people would give a try?
Yeah, I think I just want to take the moment and talk about my friend Annika Sila, who is making this dope new TTRPG game. It's going to kickstart in May called Sin Eater. So it is it's like super dope. It's like a solo journaling TTRPG. The art looks really rad, and I know that they are big, Dark Souls fan, and they are just the way their brain works, the writer that they are, I know that you're in good hands with anything that they make. So I truly think keep your eyes peeled for Sin Eater. Look it up on Kickstarter. Hit that notify me when it launches, and take it from there. That's all I got to say.
That's awesome. I'm always appreciative of creators that make solo RPGs because, we so often think of it as something that must be played with multiple people, but even as like a creative exercise alone, like being able to put yourself in that mindset, and also just if you're traveling or something, it's just a nice way to pass the time, do something rewarding from a narrative perspective. So very excited to check out Sin Eater when it comes out.
Yes, indeed.
Now, Ify, I know that you are a fellow anime enjoyer. Is there an anime that you've enjoyed recently or something that you wish more people have seen so you could nerd out with them about it?
Oh man, I think everyone's kind of on board for this, but I'm a big Dan to Dan Dan guy, and I'm a big Dan to Dan Dan Casey guy as well. They just announced that the new season's coming in July. I'm super stoked for it. But as far as the ones that I'm going to try to get on board, because I haven't, hopped on it yet, definitely want to check out Solo Leveling, and I keep calling it, and everyone will know what I mean but the liquor store anime too. I want to do that one.
Are you talking about Sakamoto Days?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
What do you mean? Are you talking about? You knew exactly what I meant when I said the liquor store
I just
anime.
had to double check, making sure there wasn't another liquor store anime out there.
No, that is the liquor
world.
store. Yeah, that is the liquor store anime. Sakamoto Days.
That is incredible. That's amazing. And cool news about Dan to Dan as well. They're also releasing, I think, the first 3 episodes of the season. They're doing a theatrical release for them. So if you want to see your favorite characters on the big screen like that, then definitely check it out. I just got the chance to see Princess Mononoke, the 4K remaster on IMAX, and I'm just like on cloud 9 after that. So it's a good time to be an anime fan is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Last question for you, Ify. It's game night. You've been tasked with choosing any game you want. People will read the rules. They'll even watch a video if you send it to them. What game are you bringing and why?
Ooh, I have been really into Escape the Dark Dungeon and Escape the Dark Sector. It is, speaking of games you can play by yourself, it is a flip card dungeon crawler, and you get the character cards to play along with their own character dice to fight against these monsters you're up against. Definitely hop into that for sure.
Escape the Dark Dungeon, Escape the Dark Sector. Sounds very cool. I'll definitely check him out. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Ify, where can people find you on the World Wide Web if, in fact, you want to be found?
Oh, man. Ify Nwadiwe on, all the social medias, and ifycomedy.com on Blue Sky, if that's what you're doing.
Amazing. Well, Ify, thank you so much again for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. Folks, you can find me online at Dan Casey or at Osteoferocious, or just right here each and every week. We'll be back with another question and answers every single week on Geek and Sundry's YouTube channel or wherever fine podcasts are served. But in the meantime, folks, first of all, thank you for listening, but we also want to know, what games are you playing this week? What are you most excited to introduce to your table? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you folks next time. Bye-bye.